Hi, I'm Pastor Steve Talmage of Love of Christ Lutheran Church in Mesa, Arizona. And each week, Pastor Nanette Christofferson and I try to provide a brief introduction to two of the upcoming assigned Bible readings for Sunday. In this video, we're going to look at the Gospel reading for Sunday, June 27th, 2021. It's the Gospel reading, Mark chapter 5, verses 21 to 43. Context. Leading into our gospel reading for today. Jesus has already been accused of being a worker of Satan in his own hometown of Nazareth. Then, moving from there to Capernaum along the Sea of Galilee, he begins to teach and tell stories or parables about the kingdom or reign of God. After a full day of telling stories, he asks that his disciples take him across the sea to the Gentile area of Gerasene. Sailing at night is often better than day, as the veteran fishermen among his disciples know how to navigate using the stars. Last week, you engaged the first of a series of demonstrations of the power of God unleashed through Jesus as their crossing was interrupted by a violent, life-threatening storm. We have a contrast of terrified disciples and a sleeping Jesus. The drama concludes with, "And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, 'Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?'" Mark begins his gospel account with these words in chapter 1, verse 1, the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. The answer to the disciples, "Who then is this?" It is Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Mark wants his readers to know who Jesus is through his words, his actions, and through the witness of how lives are changed from no faith to faith. The culmination to the answer to this question will be the death and resurrection of Jesus. After calming the storm, the boat lands on the shores of the country of the Gerasenes. Chapter 5, verses 1 to 20. This would be a Gentile territory southeast of Capernaum. Under the urgency of Mark's gospel, immediately the greeter on the shore is none other than a man forced to live in a cemetery because he's possessed not by one, but by a legion of demons. Seeking to demonstrate God is always in the business of restoration and reconciliation, Jesus exorcises the demons, who are the only ones who really seem to know who Jesus is. As the demons are cast into a herd of pigs, the townsfolk are not too happy with Jesus, or the fact that their outcast has now been made whole. One of the challenges of God being revealed in and through Jesus is that Jesus challenges the status quo, or the homeostasis that systems work hard to maintain. History is full of groups identifying individuals as possessed and worthy of being separated or cast out from their community. But in Jesus, we find one who has compassion and wants us to know that God desires for us all to find ways in which we can live in relationship with each other rather than in fear of one another. Interestingly, in this story, the man freed from the legion of demons wants to get in the boat with Jesus and follow him. But Jesus says no. Jesus wants him to remain in the territory and tell others how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy has shown you. The response to this fellow's testimony is, everyone was amazed. Now for our gospel reading, Mark 5, verses 21 to 43. A girl restored to life and a woman healed. Verse 21, Jesus again crosses the Sea of Galilee back to the northwestern shores. A great crowd has gathered around Jesus. Verses 22 to 23. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came, and when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." In most cases, the leaders of the synagogue towed the party line of the religious elite, particularly the Pharisees. But Mark points out who Jairus is, as well as affirms that when we are in a desperate situation, when everything else we have tried has not worked, we are willing to swallow our pride or what others might think, to turn to whoever might be willing to help us. Jairus humbles himself by submitting face down to the feet of Jesus, begging repeatedly for Jesus' help to heal his daughter. He believes that the touch of Jesus could bring her from the brink of death back to life. A reflection question. When have you had to swallow your pride, humble yourself, and ask someone for help? Verse 24. So he went with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Picture pro golfer Phil Mickelson trying to make his way to the 18th green as he prepared to claim the win of this year's PGA Championship. Security guards struggled to keep the crowd away enough for him to even make it to the green. Verses 25 to 34, a woman healed. Mark sandwiches two healing stories. As Jesus makes his way to Jairus' house, a woman who had been suffering from bleeding for 12 years enters the storyline. Mark makes it a point to emphasize she endured much under many physicians. She has spent all that she had. She has not gotten better. She grew worse. She had heard about Jesus. First century understanding of disease was primitive. Often what could not be healed was labeled. It's because of one's family sin or your own sin, or that you were possessed by a demon or demons. In almost every case, you were dependent on the charity of family, or you were outcast and had to fend for yourself. This woman had some resources, but then she was bankrupt by her search for a cure, which was nowhere to be found. Jesus provided one more hope. She touches his cloak, and what is interesting is that Jesus senses power has gone out from him. The disciples mocked Jesus, thinking that among the crowd they could determine who had touched him, since everyone was pressing against him. Jesus kept looking. Hearing the question from Jesus, "Who touched my clothes?" she moved forward in fear and trembling. And like Jairus earlier, she fell before Jesus and confessed. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Then we move to 35 to 42. Jairus' daughter is healed. Without missing a beat, just as the woman receives the gift and healing from Jesus, the celebration is short-lived, as people came from Jairus' house to report his daughter had died. Jesus does not need to come. Verse 36. But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." A reflection question. How have you experienced overcoming fear with belief? Jesus only allows Peter, James, and John to join him in the trip to Jairus' house and into the bedroom of the daughter. What is interesting is the comment of Jesus in verse 39. "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." Verse 40. The mourners there, they laughed at him. I encourage you to do a little word study in the Bible on when people laughed at God, an angel from God, or Jesus. It is a good indication that what is thought to be impossible becomes possible. Verses 40 to 42. Jesus prohibits the disbelievers from being in the room and does the impossible. He takes the little girl's hand and tells her to get up And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. At this, they were overcome with amazement. A reflection question. When have you been overcome with amazement by the power of God at work? In this story, we're not dealing with some charlatan or faith healer. We're dealing with Jesus, the Son of God, who comes to reveal God's desire and intent to restore and reconcile us to God and each other. God's power and love can overcome the demonic, chronic disease, and even death. How? This is a question that can only be answered with belief that it is possible. Why some and not all? This is a mystery that only God can answer. Is it fair that some are healed and others are not? Again, only God can answer. Verse 43. Jesus strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. For Mark, it is the death and resurrection of Jesus that ultimately will reveal who he is and what Jesus has accomplished for the sake of the world. As we know, humans are quick to create celebrities, or in Jesus' case, try to promote him to be the king of their liking, rather than allow him to reveal God's will on earth as it is in heaven. It is hard to believe that this miracle would be kept a secret. A closing question. How do these two stories help you move forward believing what is deemed to be acceptable or unfixable is not always the final answer? God bless you as you prepare for your worship this coming week. God bless you as you study the Word of God.